I'm Patrick, the CPO of Ternary, and I have James with me, who's our head of product. And so we're here today to talk about how you can build successful FinOps practices through collaboration. That was great.
All right.
Thank you. That's amazing. Thank you. So we have a little bit of experience in this space. We're in the wrong room.
Yeah.
All right. We have a little bit of experience in this space. Myself and my co-founders were at a large ad tech company about 5 years ago, and we were doing a migration into GCP. We overspent our budget by tens of millions of dollars and quickly became the most unpopular folks in the organization. We were asked to do what seemed impossible at that time, which was build a practice that would allow us to reduce our spend by $30 to $40 million in a period of 6 to 12 months. This FinOps did not exist at the time. We were completely unaware of this cost side of things. We were moving to the cloud to save money. So we were quickly disavowed of that notion, and we wanted to share some of the things that we've learned in that process and that we've built into our product at Ternary. So James.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk a little bit about just those levers to pull on as far as collaboration, what they can do for you. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about the whys, but the whys is, I don't know, it's one of those things like me saying, like, if you were drowning and I threw you a life preserver, would you take it? What are you going to say? No. So I'll probably move more toward the whats in terms of the hows. So we'll cover today increasing trust and accountability with collaboration, decreasing your latency as well, better shared understanding, collaboration enabling that as well, and then just institutionalizing experience. So, you know, the whole adage, when somebody gets hit by a bus, or the better case, so like they win the lottery, like what do you do with that? And it doesn't walk out the door in terms of that collaboration. A familiar tale, you know, something that Patrick was talking about a little bit. So you start on your FinOps journey. There's usually either one person that raises their hand and says, hey, I'm interested in doing that, or more likely somebody gets voluntold and says, you know, you're going to be the one doing this, and you're running around trying to talk to everybody, contextualize everybody, figure out what to do about it, what are these practices. And you know, a lot of the folks that are here actually learning about FinOps are the one that's in that center spot, but they end up standing in the middle of all this and raising their hand and saying, I need help to do all that, and them trying to do it themselves. But the better option is to collaborate. I don't know if you want to tell your tale a little bit about doing that. So.
Yeah, sure. I mean, as I mentioned before, we kind of did things backwards. Our goal was established to do a very rapid migration. There were some particular business reasons for that decision to be made. But one thing that we didn't really understand was that we really needed to partner. We were on the engineering side on infrastructure. We didn't fully understand the need to partner with finance and you know, get everybody in this diagram here together on what the goals were of our migration, how we were going to define success, and who was going to be in charge of what and what good looked like. So going through that process without a real target and without really understanding the level of trouble that we could get ourselves into, you know, that was something that we could have spent a little bit more time on, and I think everybody in this room is incredibly lucky to be at the time that we are now with this community here. There's a lot of information available, lots of places to start, and I think one of them, if it hasn't been something that you've done to date, is obviously this topic of collaboration. Everyone in here has probably been in the center square there, or will be soon. Getting buy-in, if you don't have it now, is something that you should start doing as soon as possible, even if it doesn't seem like anybody cares. There will be a time when the spend goes out of control or ramps up too much way outside of your plan, and people will suddenly care a lot more than they did before.
Okay, so let's dig in with some of the whys a little bit. So I guess one of those things in terms of accountability, or establishing that accountability. Now, accountability is kind of a funny thing. So when I say fighting that dogma, the dynamic tension dogma, so I don't know if folks have read Jack Welch's book, or you went through the Carnegie course, you know, dynamic tension, you know, it's this great thing. It's kind of interesting. There are good reasons for that. You want to avoid groupthink. You want to make sure that when you're winning, you're not resting on your laurels and saying, we're okay. And the dynamic tension helps keep you out of those things. Yeah, this isn't one of those places where you want that. You want people actually talking and working together. It's big. People say, I'm the one that really drives accountability. Hate to tell you, but nobody wants to talk to you at work when you say that sort of thing. But a lot of that has to do with just, people view that as blame. But really what we want to try and do is elaborate, what is accountability and how do you drive to that? And a lot of that talks about, really understanding what's going on. So we talk about aligning, somebody with a decision maker with the person who's actually has to do something, like understanding what needs to happen, how you're successful at doing that, and really getting to that point of accountability being making sure that you understand what you're supposed to do, what actually success looks like, what are those actions you need to take to do it, but these places to put in place and not just coming after somebody and saying, you know what, you're responsible for that and it didn't happen, or kind of what happened with, the folks at their previous role Patrick was talking about, where a long time after the fact, somebody's just looking for a backdoor to shove you out of because things didn't go that well. And that not being really the driver for accountability, but some of those things, that's kind of the why of that accountability. So enabling that accountability, some of the things, so as you're designing your process or picking a tool, some of the things we really think about as we're developing tools, we talk about expected outcomes, like what does success look like? Some examples of those things that you'd like to have in your process or when picking your tool. So a good example of an expected outcome would be coverage or ROI or expected savings from what you're trying to do. What's an actual configuration? So if you're a finance person, you're talking about that. What do you communicate to your operations team or your engineering team? So what does that, if you want to keep them accountable, expecting that, what does that configuration look like, or what's the utilization you're looking for? So these are some of the things in terms of an expected outcome that you would like to have in that defined action plans, like who's actually doing this? Is it something everybody just agreed on, but we don't know who's actually going to do that? Or even worse, everybody thinks they're doing it and you have 10 people doing the same thing. What's an actual prescribed workflow? How does it fit in with the way you work already? That would be something really good to have in your plan or in a tool you're selecting that can actually do that. Feedback loops. Workflow management, what step are we in? Where are we trying to get to? As we're doing this with a feedback loop, we've done something, we expected an outcome. Is there something in your tool or in your plan that actually goes back to measure what actually happened versus what you planned on happening? And then just as far as like assigning things, if you're making somebody accountable, did they actually accept that? Do you know they accepted it? What's the workflow when they went through that? What stage are they in? What's the follow-up? Does it have a mechanism for you to actually go back and follow up on that action if it wasn't accepted, or follow up if it didn't turn out the way you wanted to? Things actually build into the plan, so make collaboration actually institutionalized.
And I think here it's important to talk about, it's very easy to let the perfect be the enemy of the good when you're starting out in this process, or even if you're in the middle of it. It's good to just pick something and start, make sure it's communicated. And on the point of accountability, if you're the person that's accountable, you're going to be accountable whether you like it or not. And if you're not the accountable one, you may be selected to be there. So getting in front of it and really, getting ahead of the curve and deciding to start somewhere, pick an outcome, even if it's the wrong one, and test and iterate over and over and over again, that's the way through this process. And so doing that successfully, we have found in our own experience, is by building the team of people that, whether they understand the problem fully today, is a team of people that you can work with, a team that can start to think through the problem from all the different disciplines, getting everyone on the same page, and making sure that if you're the accountable person, you very clearly establish and communicate what the starting point is, what the ending point is, and then you kind of figure out as a team and rely on each other to get through the rest of it. It's a daunting task, there's a lot of things to do, but just picking one thing, whether it's we're gonna look at 30% coverage for RIs, whatever it is, pick something, work on it, figure it out, and then move on to the next thing.
Latency, so hunting down and killing latency. When I talk about latency, there are lots of definitions. One that seemed to work for me over time is latency I'd use to describe the length of time between something happening and you actually knowing that it happened, good or bad, but trying to shrink that. The why would you want to hunt down and kill latency? Dynamic environment, so things are changing all the time. So the latency means that, when you're hearing about something, that's not actually even the case anymore. Missing things that are actually transient anomalies, so something showed up and it just went away, and so that latency means that you go look at something and something might have happened and gone away and you didn't actually know it was there. So that's bad because you might have these things, unexpected costs that pop up over time, but you didn't know they were there because it was something very transient that happened and it's just not there anymore. And this one is certainly, I know one that Patrick in his story is very familiar with. Things actually getting escalated before you can actually even do anything about it. So you get to that point in time where they got to the end of their project with tens of millions of dollars, and I said, all of a sudden somebody's coming down on them and they haven't even had a chance to react to it because they didn't know it. Over here on the right is something we used before, and so it's developed by an actual fighter pilot. It's called the OODA loop. And basically what it talks about is, in order for you to actually win, you have to do 4 things all the time. You have to understand what's going on around you or observe, orient yourself to what's going on there, make a decision and act on it. And the situation with fighter pilots, the other person's doing this as well. If they can get to the end of this before the other person, then they force that person to go all the way back to the beginning to observe what they acted upon and keep going after them. Now, nobody's trying to kill us, but the fact of the matter is the dynamic environment's changing all the time, so that's our adversary. It's always changing, and if there's a lot of latency, you never actually get to the point where you can actually come up with your own plan of where you want to be. You're always just playing whack-a-mole and stomping out fires all the time. And so that's where that actually comes into play. So that's why latency is just one of those things that you really want to figure out. But that's all great and everybody understands, I want to be fast about it, but this is all about the hows, so that's great, but how are you going to do this? And so when you're designing your process, picking your tools, what are some things that are actually going to help you hunt down and kill that latency? So some of the things that actually are pretty common, so a tool or a practice that allows you to put in things like rules and policies. So why are those important? The fact of the matter is you actually have another job to do. Your company has something else to do. So rather than you looking at this at a regular cadence, can you set up some rules that allow you to know when to take action or when something is happening wrong or when you have an opportunity? So can you set up something that's specific to you? Context, why is this important? What's the end goal of this? Things that show up in context are like unit cost metrics would be a good context thing. How does that affect the rest of the business? Customization, I mentioned, specific to your organization. So tools can be very general, but how do you customize it so specifically to match your strategy, what your organization looks like? Automation, computers are good at doing ingesting large amounts of data and pulling them down into actual information, so taking advantage of that. Integration, putting things where you're used to looking at them already. You have business systems set up okay already. How do you get that information into someplace people are already looking? Predictive modeling in AI and ML. So not only what's happened in the past to know on it, but wouldn't it be great if you could know about stuff that's likely to happen in the future before it actually happens? So to model those things out.
Yeah, and so this is what you see on screen here is an example of how we think about reducing latency within our product. This is a place to get to if you're looking at a commercial solution. If you're not there yet, you can do simple things like just getting visibility in place. So maybe you, instead of reviewing your bill at the end of a month and you see a spike in your spend, you set up some sort of dashboards that give you visibility within a couple of days or a day. And where we are at today is within a few hours of spend happening, we're able to provide visibility to our customers, and then working towards this idea of we see some patterns that look like you're about to overspend, and so we want to alert you on that. This is a great use of, a responsible use of AI and ML that's super exciting for us and our customers.
Reducing latency, another one has to do with I talked a little bit about integration. So flexing existing muscles, like you have muscle memory that's going on inside of your organization, workflows that you already use, tools you already use. How do you actually leverage that existing muscle memory? On the screen, I talk about ergonomics. So ergonomics are literally talking about fitting the job to the person instead of the other way around. Ergonomics is probably not the best use of this, but just think about it. What does your organization already look like, and how do we fit this into your existing organization as opposed to trying to reshape your organization? So how do you actually do that with what's going on right now? So with integration, so there's a tool that you already use, there's a process you already use. How do you inject that information into what your organization is already using?
So this would be an example for us, and I'll pre-apologize to any consultants in the room. Like when our previous experience where we had a number of consultants come in and help us better understand our problem, there was sort of this drive to put the collaboration piece into a tool that no one in our organization used, which made it incredibly difficult for anything to get done, because there's one dashboard here for finance, there's one dashboard in the consultancy, there's one dashboard for engineering, there's one for the program management team to collaborate on all these things and combine them. So what we found, and what our customers tell us on a regular basis, is we don't want another process. We don't want another place to have data. We don't want to have another place to track a task. We want it where we operate today. So put it in front of our engineers in Jira. Put it in front of our engineers in Slack, somewhere that they're actually working. Let them operate from there, and whoever's running this environment. So for us, the platform can be operated by a FinOps team, an engineer, whoever is working on it. They can operate within the tool itself, and it will post back to Slack or to Jira, or in Jira, and it will post back to the tool, so that no one is being asked to go outside of their processes. This is pretty key to establishing good collaboration. And so we also have this idea of case management, where when that reduction in latency we saw in the last slide, an anomaly is triggered, you have the opportunity to go through the tool, build out your case for where it came from, who are the owners of the resources, assigning those and asking them to go and do some work on it, and then post it right into Jira. That opposed to something like we have someone go out into the engineering team and ask some questions, and then they come back and report. We may have a game of telephone somewhere in there because the people aren't super technical. They provide the wrong link, et cetera, and it makes it really complicated to get things done. So our experience has told us, and our customers tell us regularly, leave things alone in the companies that you're operating in, and if you're building the FinOps practice, let it happen within engineering if that's where it happens. Let it happen within finance if that's what it happens. If your budgets are in GL products, pull them down into this tool. So yeah, there's a lot we could talk about there. Maybe we'll save time at the end for that. But James, go ahead.
Okay, reducing latency a little bit more. So we talked about ergonomics and flexing existing muscles, but building up new muscles, and so that's part of why all of us are here as well. There's a common language. So folks in this room that are FinOps practitioners, if I say inform, optimize, operate, those words actually mean something to you beyond the words themselves. That being said, you go out to the outside world, people will recognize those words, but they don't necessarily mean the same thing they mean to us in this particular context. That being said, certainly one of the things is we're here as part of an education, so learning a little bit more about what those actually mean, how do you go about those things. That being said, wouldn't it be great if you built into your processes when you're establishing your FinOps practice or selecting your tools, if that context is built actually into the application itself? So somebody in a finance role, when somebody starts talking cloud to them, so it includes that context of things like building that new muscle into their actual processes for things like instance resource, things that actually mean something to an engineer or an operator that's operating in cloud. Likewise, an engineer that actually needs to speak to folks in finance, they have terms built right into their action plans like ROI, savings, break even. Those actual terms that actually mean something to them, establishing that context. But building that right into the actual processes and tools, so building up that new muscle through your actual systems, building it institutionally so that that's actually built in to actually help reduce that latency. In this particular case, that latency actually conveys that understanding, so you automatically have that language when you're talking amongst each other. People don't actually have to learn that. It's fit into, they understand why you're talking to them about this, what the goal is, where they're being affected. So those are great things we found that we try and, as we're developing things and building things, that we think about how do we build that in to actually help people with that latency. So just really quickly what we talked about today, in terms of collaboration, some of the really important things, a clear, shared understanding and plans are great things as far as collaboration. Make sure you include bridge to existing tools. So make things ergonomic for folks. Make them easy to adapt by adapting already processes that you have in place as well as tools. Minimize the latency. How do you drive down that to make sure that things happen quickly? So shorten the time between something happening and you know about it and can take action. Practices and tools can both help you with your collaboration in your FinOps journey. With that, we left a little bit of time for questions if anybody has anything that we can answer.
We've got like, woohoo, I don't know, 9 minutes. I'm trying to do math. Math is hard, folks. We've got 9 minutes for questions. So who has a question? And I will walk to you with the microphone so you can talk into it and feel like you're on a talk show. Come on. Yes, we have a taker over here.
All
You
right.
can prize like a fox or something that everybody got for free already, but we'll get you another one. Hold on. Here you go.
Thank you. So on one of the slides, you guys talked about accountability, and that's something that I've been trying to drive internally, and sometimes I deal with some teams who are like, hey, say there's some allocation tags that we need to get set up, and they're like, well, the platform needs to provide us the tooling so it's done easy, and then the teams are like, well, you guys are building your own instances, so you guys tag it yourself, and nobody wants to say, so who's responsible for those types of things? And I'm not saying who should do it, but what's the best way to approach these things when people are just very averse to wanting to take accountability for things?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, which depends heavily on your company and the way things are set up. So maybe abstracting it away a little bit, rather than trying to figure out who the best person is, maybe trying to understand the culture in a way that the tasks can be assigned in a way that it's not like a blame culture, right? So like for our previous experience, the finance team was very top down in how they delivered the instructions on what we had to save and when. And we acted as the translation layer between finance and engineering to figure out a way to work together, and also product management, right? Like you come down and say this, you need to go and tag all these resources, and maybe that's a small amount, or maybe that's 500 clusters worth of resources in our case. And we were like, well, I'm not really sure what to tell you. It doesn't just happen. So this product manager and this product manager and this product manager's roadmaps are all going to be messed up because we have to go back, redeploy everything. We need to talk to operations. We need to talk to finance. We need to talk to everybody. And so I think if you are the person that is coordinating it, helping be that sort of translation layer and providing air cover to the people that need to do the work and helping them understand the business context of why it's the case and helping shift around priorities where possible, that's a very utopian view, obviously. Like that doesn't really work everywhere. So I guess I would say it's based on experience. It's pretty dependent on where you are, but maybe thinking about it, a step backwards from the specific task and like how can you translate it into a non-blame sort of action plan.
So to add on to that, I guess what I would say is I tend to think about things from a software development sort of product management standpoint. And any way you can break it up into small tasks. So instead of saying that everything needs to be tagged, which sounds to somebody like a big thing and 100% sort of success criteria, if you say, hey, it'd be really nice, right now we're at 20%, and specifically for our resource tag, we want all of the compute to be tagged with this very specific tag in this project, and can we do that by Tuesday? And then make it incremental and iterative, but very specific, and move that direction from there. As much as you can bust it up, just do it in small increments. As Patrick said, you're going to iterate your way into things. I would iterate toward success and make those success metrics iterative.
James Patrick, I wanted to offer a thought as well. Organizational design can help quite a bit in this respect. If we look at some of the most powerful ideas that we've seen over the last 20 years, Agile is clearly one of them. And we faced this before. We faced this when DevOps was created. If you want to align teams internally, put them together. If you can take the finance team and add them to the engineering team, if they feel like they're one team, then they will naturally align. They'll naturally arrive at the right thing. And I understand that, this is a very buzzy answer, but if you want your orgs to succeed, I think this is what you have to do. We've seen it succeed before. DevOps is a great example of that. You can't deliver product effectively because the engineers and the operations folks are arguing with each other. We'll put them on the same team. They'll sit with each other. They'll see each other's pain. They'll figure out the same problem. So if you can manage to do that within your organization, if you have leadership that understands this, I think you've got a great shot at solving the larger problem.
All right. Do we have any more questions? We have time for like one more. Thank you guys, because I was starting to feel really weird just glaring at people as we were walking. And don't worry, I will do that too. All right. Alec, I think you were first here. I'm going to stand here, not to block you, but to block the sound from going into the speaker.
Thanks. So when you were on stage earlier, the one word I wrote down, which I didn't hear from very many others, I don't think, was forecasting. Didn't hear much of that through that. Is that something that you could just spend a couple of minutes on?
Sure. Can you clarify a little bit more? What are you interested in hearing about?
So for us, we find it really difficult to forecast our cloud spend, to get those estimates. Mm-hmm. So moving into how do we forecast all the way through, right from we want to put something in to then monitoring it. Is that something that you see as a problem across the area?
Yeah, very definitely. So in my experience and with customers, forecasting is, people think of as kind of one of those third rails, like how do I know that I'm right and how do I know that I want to take action on it? Once again, busting up into some very specific things. So one, there are other tools, and so Patrick mentioned, things like Anaplan, where people spend a lot of time and effort into things like forecasts. And so however you can, in an automated fashion, pull that in to what you're doing for FinOps so that you're operating off the same sheet of music, that's great. Some other things in terms of simplifying. We mentioned AI ML. That's one of the things we're leveraging going forward. So based upon what's happened in the past, allow a computer to generate something that will look at a forecast. And another thing that has come up is just a very simple sort of scenario planning for people, putting in very simple metrics that aren't so daunting for folks, like, can I put in a 3% growth and what does that look like based upon my past usage, and have a tool that can do that for you? Can I look at that versus a 2%? That at least you can sit down and collaborate and say, does this look right to me? Does it not look right to me? But those are just a couple of ways, and if you can do a few of these things, but the integration certainly one, something you put a lot of work into someplace else in an organization that you can take advantage of. That's a great one. If you can do it very simply with a simple metric that you can plug in and toggle in multiple scenarios, or conversely, leverage something like AML where it can take in a lot of data and say, based on that, moving forward, this is what it could potentially look like. Those are all things that people would love to leverage that have found themselves to be very useful and make it a little bit less daunting for folks.
All right. It is time for all of you to remind James and Patrick how amazing they are by giving them the biggest round of applause, because I happen to know that Joe is over there in Breakout A, and I won't let him win. Woo!
Thanks for watching that session. I'm sitting here in San Diego right after FinOps X. We hope you join us next year here live 2024. In the meantime, please subscribe to the channel and join the community. Get involved, join the summits, get in a working group, and don't forget to get FinOps certified. Because next year here in San Diego for FinOps X, it's going to be twice as big. Come join the party. Come meet your people. Welcome home.